welcome to Chaotic Riff TV. My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and today we have for our guest Lothar Keller, the lead singer and guitarist from Sacred Dawn. How you doing today, Lothar?
Doing okay, man. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you again. Now, today we're going to be talking a lot about the new album, which is the title is what's the name of the new album? I'm sorry.
Dismal Swamp.
Dismal Swamp. That's it.
Yeah.
Now that album just came out. It's your third full-length release. How would you say? Would you say the overall sound is kind of continued to be the same? Would you say your sound has kind of progressed on this latest release?
Well, we try to take a different approach to the mixing on this, and I think because of the music that we wrote for the record, it's a little bit more. There was a little bit more atmosphere, I guess, in some aspects of this record, but at the same time, some of the songs were a little lengthier and had some more, I guess, what you would call like an epic vibe, or
it's funny you say that because in prepping for the interview, I was listening to some of the songs off the new album. First one I listened to was Unintended Consequences. I would, to my ears, I definitely say it's kind of epic sounding. It's kind of, to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of has a progressive rock sound. I say that because the vocal does not even come into the song until like almost 3 minutes into the song, which is kind of interesting.
It's just what the song called for. When we were writing it, we actually, originally when we wrote that song, the Das Chaos Beginnt that starts the whole record was actually part of that song. And I was like, we could kind of separate these, make them two different things, because we're, at this point we're like 5 minutes in and vocals still hadn't started. But that whole beginning part really kind of had its own thing, so we just kind of separated it and had them flow into one another. And so when the song kicks in, it's already kind of taking you into this journey, and it's like, where are we going? We're going through this wormhole, and then we end up, boom.
And again, the reason I point that out and I took notice of it is I listen to what I guess you consider like typical hard rock and metal, and so typically the vocals come in a lot sooner. But what was interesting listening to this song for the first time is, like you said, I felt like I was being taken on a musical journey. It was it was a different, I guess, approach to what I typically listen to, but I still liked it. I still, oh wow, this is really something different, but in a good way.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I think back, like, Rush was obviously one of my, one of the bands I really gravitated to at a young age. And when I heard The Camera Eye for the first time, I was like, wow, it's like this really cool whole intro builds up, and then, vocals are like several minutes in. It's like, but it fit the song. I mean, that one's a lengthy song as well.
Anybody that's a fan of like Fate's Warning will dig this stuff. It's
oh man, yeah. No, I love Fate's Warning.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and so when you were first starting out in music, I was curious. Did you, like a lot of musicians, start out as a guitar player, or did you always sing as well?
Singing was kind of something I just always did.
Yeah.
But I actually originally, the very first instrument I ever put in my hands, my father gave me a recorder. I was like 5 years old. Taught me how to play at that age. By the time they were teaching at school, I was already playing classical pieces and trios and quartets. I also was in elementary school. I was also convinced to join the boys' choir in North Carolina. So I did that for a few years, but my voice changed so quickly. So by the time I was 12, I was a bass.
Oh, wow. And there's no shame in that, because what people need to understand is, I mean, you look at some of our heroes like Randy Rhoads and even Eddie Van Halen. They started out, especially Randy, classical music. Even Eddie Van Halen started out on, he was originally a drummer and also a piano player. And I think when you start out on other instruments, or you have the ability to play other instruments, it makes you number one, a well-rounded musician, because you can do more than just one thing. And it also, I think, allows you to have a better understanding of what the other guys in your band are doing.
It does. And when you play in those quartets or trios with other people, your timing has to be impeccable, because now everybody has to follow each other. And then, that was just part of the nature of growing up playing that. It was very organized, but it was really good and structured. And I liked the music too.
Yeah, when you can do it, I think too, it makes you a better writer. Probably it makes you even a better producer when you go in the studio. And you kind of know what everybody's doing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because a lot of these songs I wrote in my head, I knew
Yeah.
what to do when I got home, but
Yeah.
I don't always write with a guitar in my hand. Honestly, it's just
Yeah, I was going to ask
sometimes it
that. So,
feels
being
forced.
that you're a singer and guitar player, do you sometimes write where you might start out with writing the lyrics, or does it typically start with the guitar riff?
Usually the guitar riff first. Yeah, the only song that I actually built the song around the lyrics was the Lake of the Dismal Swamp because it's a poem, and I didn't want to
And,
change anything.
and One More Day, I like that song too, because it's even you compare it to Unintended Consequence, a very different type of sounding song, but
Yeah,
it's good. Like as you go down and you listen to the other songs on the album, what I kind of dig is every song kind of has a character of its own, and there are no two songs that sound just alike, and that's why I think people can get into this music in an album like this.
uh, yeah, and sometimes I try to be careful not to over repeat things, and I
Yeah,
still find that there's maybe tiny bits that I pulled from other records, but
yeah,
at the end of the day, it was like, yeah, each song is its own entity, and
yeah,
that's why people tell me they have their own favorite song and it's something different, which is kind of
yeah.
cool because I'm like, well, that means each song we wrote touched somebody differently, which is awesome.
And as a writer, that's got to be a great feeling because I mean, let's be honest, being the writer, you know what you wrote the song about, and but you have fans come up to you or even email you, tell you, hey, this song means something to me. It reminds me of when my mother, father died, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
Maybe remind them first time they lost their first love or something, and you're like, wow, that's not what the song's really about, but
Yeah,
wow, it means something different to you. And
yeah,
it's all about interpretation, if you know what I mean. And so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would think as a writer, you don't necessarily want to tell somebody, well, that's not what it's about, but it's got to be a beautiful thing to have somebody tell you, this is what I got out of it, something different.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's totally cool. Whatever they took from it, hey, is all good at the end of the day. So
And let's see. And also, One More Day, it's got a great melody running all through the song. So that's another truth be told. That's kind of a cross between, to me, metal meets progressive rock. But again, that's probably of the songs I was listening to so far, probably the most heaviest thing. But again, just those three songs are kind of so totally different, but they all stand out.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean,
So
it would go ahead.
I was gonna say you mentioned Rush, but who were some of your other heroes growing up?
Well, I loved Iron Maiden, Priest, except all those Scorpions, Yngwie. When I discovered Yngwie, early Vinnie Moore. I mean, I listened to the Tony McAlpine, Maximum Security. That record as an instrumental blew me away when I first heard it. It's like, what? Okay. It took me a while to absorb it because I was like, at that point, I was really getting sucked into the neoclassical metal.
Yeah,
Uh, and of course, early on, at the age of 6, 7 years old, I loved Yes, and of course, Beatles and Zeppelin and all that. But the metal side, I really got Iron Maiden and those key people really sucked me in. And then bands like Sabotage came into the
yeah,
picture, fell in love with them. It's kind of one of those lists that keeps growing.
yeah,
Was
yeah.
Dream
Well,
Theater.
it's quite a diverse list, and I think in listening to your music, and it makes sense why there's such a diverse sound because all these various influence. I mean, um, people might be surprised that a guy like you is influenced by the Beatles, but I mean, you talk to any any musician, everybody from Tom Petty, the Eagles, guys in Kiss, Motley
Yeah.
Crue, I'll cite like the Beatles as influences, and you look
Even
at
Black
like
Sabbath
yeah,
said
yeah.
that.
I mean, you look at like the album number ones, 27 number ones. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard for any band to have one number one, let alone 27 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That is very true.
Kind of, so the Beatles, I mean, everybody I think is influenced, even people that aren't from that generation. We're still hearing those songs, on the radio all these years later.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And people forget, you look at the history of rock and roll. Before there was the Beatles, there or Black Sabbath, there was Elvis Presley and
Yeah.
BB King, and all these guys.
And you got to give those people props, man.
Yeah,
Howling Wolf got a lot of those cats and Rolling Stones going, man. I was like, that's what they grew up. They loved that early blues, and that's what I mean. All those guys, you know, the Beatles, Rolling Stones. That's what got them really rolling on that.
And you know, it's another guy you just brought up, Vinnie Moore. Um, I'm kind of surprised that he is so underrated. And what I mean by underrated is I would think at this point in his career he would have been kind of more mainstream, but he's had a great career for what he's done. And I got to ask, what did you think of when the American Vinnie Moore joined the legendary British rock band UFO?
Yeah, you know, I actually got to see them in Aurora, Illinois. Like, oh gosh, it's been probably 15 years now, but you know, it was cool. It was fun to watch. You know, I liked it.
I mean, yeah.
But
The reason I ask is, anybody's a fan of like the classic era, with Michael Schenker. It's not Michael
I
Schenker, but you
know
know what? I love the fact that it allowed the band to carry on, with a
it.
new
It
guy.
did, and the thing is that you know, I know he could shred a lot more if he
Yeah,
wanted to, but
yeah,
he does what the songs need live, and you know, you got to give him respect that he's been doing it for a while now.
yeah. And
Actually,
that's why a guy like Vinnie Moore takes a gig like that because as great as he is doing his own thing, that's a much higher profile gig, and you're gonna have a
oh
lot more
yeah,
people come and see you in concert, and be exposed
oh
to what
yeah.
you do. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. So I mean, it's you know, I'm glad to see people like him are still busy. You
yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's cool. So
Yeah, because again, the music world is a very different place these days. It's bands don't even like get on a tour bus pretty much. It's weekend gigs and stuff. It's not like when we were growing up.
yeah, no, this is very true.
And
I
you were
mean,
mentioning before we went on the air that you recently had a CD release party for the new album. So you want to talk about what that show was like for you?
yeah, I mean, you know, it was interesting because for us preparing for this, you know, we've gone through a few lineup changes over the years, and um, we had the opportunity to bring Brad Sabathny, who was on the first record, back into the fold. So we prepped, and it was the first really full debut of the four of us playing together in, well, let me think here, 13 years. It was pretty magical, and it was like glue. I mean,
Talk about the decision to bring him back. I mean, was somebody in your management, or just did you say, hey, why don't we reach out to him, see if he wants to come back to the?
well, you know, each because Mike Musil came from Divinity Compromise, so he recorded the drums on our record for us, and he did an amazing job. But you know, everybody's has their own conflicts and scheduling and stuff. So you know, when we were like, hey, we're going to be doing this, it was kind of like because we've kind of been in limbo for a while because we were technically on like a hiatus because I
Yeah,
was busy with the Skull and Divinity Compromised. And when this whole thing about writing this record came about, you know, Mike had been jamming with us and recorded the short little single EP we did in 2019, Contradiction. And I was like, well, hey, do you want to do this record with us? And he's like, yeah, sure. So we went about recording this record. And then when it started coming time for like gigs coming about, you know, again, there's always conflicts, and it's
sure, sure.
just how it goes.
Yeah,
But Brad reached out and said, hey, what's going on, guys? Like, well, we're planning on some, you know, an album release. And so we started talking, and you know, he was missing being in the band, and we're like,
that's pretty
well,
cool.
let's see
Yeah.
how it goes. Let's have a rehearsal. Let's just feel each other out. There's no
Yeah.
commitments or anything like that.
And what was
And
that first show like with him back in the band?
it was pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you know, it was almost like we never stepped off the stage and
I
hadn't
mean,
seen
it's
each
yeah, you at least kind of had the feeling, I guess, that we know at least he can play these songs, because he did it before.
Oh yeah, all he had to really do was learn the new ones.
Yeah.
And that was really the only learning curve, but for him that's he almost came in more prepared than we did. I
Yeah,
gotta be honest.
and like you said, these days, I mean, even including yourself, most musicians are working guys. A lot of them have day
Yeah.
jobs and they do other things. Very much like yourself.
Yeah.
Some guys have more than one band to make a living. It's just the nature of the beast these days. But I
Yeah.
was curious, when you write songs, you immediately know like if it's going to be a Sacred Dawn song, or do you have that feeling, or is it matter you just, well, I'm writing for Sacred Dawn, so that's what we're writing for right now.
Yeah, because I did help with some of the writing on the Divinity records, the last one, but also haven't been so involved with the Skull records. There is a bit of a gear shift, but again, because of the fact that I've listened to so many different things, it's not really so much that difficult for me. But when I have had a few riffs that I was trying to decide whether it was going to go to the Skull or whether it was going to go to Sacred Dawn. Divinity was never an issue because that band was a little bit more tuned in to more of a particular sound and style, and Jeff is pretty much the principal writer of that band. So my interjections with him was more collaborations. But with Sacred Dawn, it's been mostly me and John Vitale. We wrote this second record with just sitting
And
demoing
so, like,
everything out.
I imagine you, Sacred Dawn. Also, you got probably like a set box of what fans expect from a band or a certain sound, but you're kind of expected to stay within. But at the same time, you think with Sacred Dawn, there's a little more freedom to kind of spread your wings and
Yeah,
yeah,
because I write what I want to do. And it's no offense to the other bands. I love writing with them.
sure, sure.
But it's always been my baby. So it's, I guess you could say I'm the
Whereas with
last
other bands,
word
maybe
on it.
it's more of a team effort as far as
It really has been.
yeah,
I mean, like I said, John spent during the pandemic, he came out here once a week, and we just kind of started from scratch here. Let's start demoing these out. And I would play the drums, bass, keyboards,
yeah, very
guitar,
cool.
do some, what the vocals may or may not be, and send it to everybody. It's like, start listening to these. We're going to get together in a couple months. We'll rehearse, and then we're going to start recording. We
Yeah.
never rehearsed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We just went straight to recording. Because again, it was a matter of getting everybody together in the same room, and I was trying to be sensitive to what everybody's personal
Space.
COVID protocol was. So we did the best we could. So we just went out there and said, all right, you ready to record? And so I re-recorded all the scratch tracks to a click, went down there and started rolling with the drums and got all the drums done first. And I brought all the tracks back home and finished the rest. So it was a building process. And then when it was time to do the mixing, I was going to do the mixing myself. But then an old friend, Jerry Buchko, reached out and said, hey, I'd be interested in working
Yeah.
with you on your record. It's like, oh, okay.
And then,
And
when you get in Sacred Dawn mode, I imagine the cool thing about it is being that you're the principal songwriter, you can kind of just do your thing. You don't have to feel too much pressure. But on the flip side of that, when you get with other bands and it's more of a collaborative effort, I imagine a lot of times you might write some certain part of a song and maybe one of your bandmates come in and, hey, that's a great idea. I love that. I love that. Or what they come up with even inspires you.
right, exactly. And that did happen actually in the final mixing process. Like, hey, can you go back and record this? Is like, sure, sounds
Yeah,
like a good idea. Why not? I mean, all we have is time. I mean, at
yeah.
this point, it was like we would have rather spent a little more time to get everything added. That, God, let's do that.
So
I
when
mean,
you're on
even down
stage,
to it's like,
Lothar,
let's
would you
grab a
say
12
you
string.
play as, excuse me, I was gonna say when you're on stage, do you play as much guitar as while you're singing, or you kind of just concentrate on your singing while you're on stage?
With Sacred Dawn, I have to concentrate on both.
Yeah, yeah.
Divinity, I didn't play guitar in the band.
Oh,
So I just had to sing, which changes how I write songs.
yeah.
Because if I got a guitar in my hand, I'm going to write a melody or something around that riff. Typically, I'm going to kind of cater to what I'm already thinking.
Yeah, see,
If
that's
I'm,
why I respect guys like you doing what you do because I don't think people realize, um, it's hard for anybody to get up on stage and do what you guys do, but the fact that, when you're the front man, all eyes are on you, and you've got to not only remember all your lyrics to sing, but you got to remember the guitar parts as well.
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, but it's sometimes I think having a guitar in my hand helps in a lot of
It
aspects.
takes you kind of that, like you got something like holding your hand, like it allows you to do a little more than one thing. Whereas, do you have a preference, like working as a sole guitar player versus being in a band where they have two guitar players?
I actually prefer two guitar
Yeah,
players.
I don't know why. I do too. Most of the bands I grew up on had two guitar players. Classic like Judas Priest sound. Or now you're obviously an Iron Maiden fan, so let me ask you, what did you think when they went from being a two guitar band to Now they're a 3-guitar band. I kind of dig it. I think it fattened up the sound. But what's your thought on that?
It does. It really, I mean, especially for the live stuff, they can cover even more parts that they couldn't do before live. They've actually made it work. I mean, what, gosh, 38 Special was another 3-guitar band, wasn't
Originally,
Wishbone Ash. There's a few Almonds.
yeah,
It has worked. It's when people try to all do the same thing. I think each player needs to fill out their own zone. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And
That's why that
I
works.
could use a third guitar player.
Yeah, and I think I love the fact in the Iron Maiden situations simply because when Bruce and Adrian came back to the band, they didn't want to ask Yannick to leave. They didn't want to. Oh, can you leave? Well, you have to
Yeah,
leave.
you know what, and that's cool. That's
Yeah,
respectful because they are a family
brother.
unit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I props to them for making that decision because again, people dig it. So
And so, what's the next year ahead look for like for Sacred Dawn? You guys going to be doing some more touring on this record? Are you already thinking about next
yeah,
album?
we're looking at each other's schedules and starting to plan out the next year because I have to plan for also what the Skull, which is now going to be Legions of Doom, also their schedule's going to be because that we're going to be recording a record this winter. So I'm try to be sensitive to both schedules. It's kind of first come first serve. But obviously if a really huge festival comes along for the Skull Legions, I have to obviously take that into
Priority, yeah.
consideration. But with Sacred Dawn, we're going to definitely get out as much as we can. We're looking to see what festival options there are, and we're talking about maybe doing a Europe trip next year. So
Wow, that's something to look for. That's pretty cool. We're kind of wrapping up, getting towards the end of 2023. I was curious, like Halloween's like next week. Do you have anything you like to do around Halloween? Like you a fan of watching old horror movies or anything like that?
oh yeah, in fact, we are just watching some stuff earlier. I mean, we you got to go through the classics. Halloween was last night. Try to always watch the first version of something, Freddy. Yeah, it's a cool time. Sometimes put the Shutter channel on, just let whatever's.
What amazes me is I love those classic ones, especially the Universal horror ones. Like you go back to the 1930s, Dracula and Frankenstein. I mean, those were like just the beginning of talking movies, and it's funny to see the evolution of film. I mean, and there's something to be said about those classic black and white horror films.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, even at the Fall of the House of Usher with Vincent Price.
Oh,
Remember
sure.
that one?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Another one I just watched, it was just a great comedy, was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I mean, that goes all the way back to 1948, but
Yeah.
even like what's interesting is you look like from the original Frankenstein to that, how much like movie making had advanced. I mean, there was like dialogue all the way through the movie, and I love the fact that that was like a combination of horror and comedy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
And then, like I said, we're getting ready to wrap up. Get near the end of the year. Holidays are also right around the corner. Is there anything that you typically do around the holidays that you really enjoy?
Yeah. Strangely enough, I go to work on Thanksgiving.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I work in TV. It's my day job,
Oh,
so
okay. Wow.
it's
You're,
not
you're,
it's not a bad thing.
entertainment all the way around, huh? Yeah.
I set myself up on purpose to be able to be in front and behind the scenes.
It's
This
funny how
way,
that works, and often one thing will lead to something else, or like
yeah.
probably a lot of times you work TV and they find out you're a musician. You're in a bit. Oh, you play guitar. You
Oh,
want
I've had my band on WGN before. We've performed a few times actually.
to?
First time we ever performed, and you can find it on YouTube if you type in WGN Sacred Dawn.
Yeah.
You'll find us doing "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" on there, and that was
Oh, I
gosh,
love that. I love that. See, that's not
yeah,
something you would typically expect Sacred Dawn to perform. And
no,
did you stay pretty true to the original, or did you kind of meddle it up?
we meddled it up, but we did it in a Sacred Dawn way.
I got to check that
So
out, and I'll see if I can post
go
that along with this when we post the interview. And
go find that. Yeah, you'll get a kick out of it.
oh,
There's an
that's great.
interview and stuff too. The way it's edited together, there's some excerpts of when we were doing,
Okay.
some teasers out the commercial, and then they do the interview, and then we do the
Yeah.
performance. You'll
Yeah.
enjoy
And
it.
before you wrap it up for today, I should probably let people know they can get the latest CD by Sacred Dawn. It's on CD and vinyl. So talk about that. I mean, I love the fact
Yeah.
vinyl's making a comeback and you guys are still putting out physical product.
Oh yeah, we did. I mean, obviously we did a CD for this. No Dust Records did a European release, Jewel Case. We did a US Digipack release. And then this really cool transparent green vinyl. It's beautiful. It's 160 grams, so it's a nice heavyweight. And that's available through either Qumran Records, Qumran records.com. We're also on all the outlets like
Sure.
Amazon, Tower, all that.
I'm an old school guy. That's why I love when bands still put out physical product. I love to have something in my hand to hold, look at who played on the album, who wrote the songs, and beautiful artwork. I think kids today are missing that. I mean, I had somebody tell me the other day, "Oh man, I don't even buy albums anymore. I just get the digital download. I don't, I worry about having to have somewhere to store all my CDs or whatever." But I'm like, you're missing. I miss the day of going to a record stores. Kids, there used to be this place where you'd go called Tower Records, and they had different record stores.
Yep.
You could actually go and buy your music. I mean, these days, if you go to Target, like you're not gonna find the latest Sacred Dawn. You might find the Beach Boys' greatest hits, but it's very limited there.
Well, interestingly enough, is like, especially around the Chicago area here, the amount of record stores that we have are in abundance in certain pockets of the area. There's this one record store I've been doing business with out in McHenry, Illinois. It's in the far northwest suburbs. And the day after Sacred Dawn did their CD release party, so I helped bring over Diggeth from Europe. So they did like a 4-day tour.
And again, Lothar, it's interesting to kind of hear. I've heard that from different people. It kind of, I guess, depends on what part of the United States you live. I live in the Los Angeles area, and I'm telling you, the closest record store I wanted to go to would be in Hollywood, California, like 45 minutes away from where I live.
Really?
And so I'm sure there's like deep pockets, somewhere, but you got to really, even in the heart of Los Angeles, you got to really look for that. Or that's why
interesting.
most people, I buy my stuff online a lot of times through Amazon or for it's a band website. Now, where can people find you guys online?
Well, Amazon, Tower Records, actually, sacreddawn.net, qumranrecords.com. Type us in pretty much on any kind of search. I mean, if you type in Sacred Dawn Dismal Swamp vinyl, you'll find different outlets that you can buy it from. So we're pretty much all over.
Well, Lothar, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. I realize it's a little later where you are, so I appreciate you.
Absolutely cool. Thanks for having me.
Great talking to you. This interview, I'm going to do my best to get it up later this week, maybe by Friday. I will let you know as soon as it goes up. Feel free to share it and post it on all your sites if you like. And before we go, the last thing I'd like to say is I'd like to give a huge shout out to our mutual friend, Lothar PR, for setting this up. He's given me a lot of great interviews over here, so I really appreciate that. So thanks to him, and he does a great job of like promoting great bands like Sacred Dawn. So we love him for that.
Oh yeah, got to give Lothar PR every prop.
And I love that, Lothar PR. He really is.
It's a great name. You got to love it.
Take care, my friend.
All right, you do the same.